Hey guys, welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about cholera.
On tonight's program, ladies and gentlemen, we have something that's going to make you sick.
I recently picked up a book titled The Ghost Map, the story of London's most terrifying epidemic and how it changed science, cities, and the modern world. I actually first found this book in an antique shop in Vermont back in December, but they only took cash, and being the millennial that I am, obviously my pockets were devoid of physical currency. But in light of recent events, this book popped back into my head and I ordered it off thriftbooks.com. So, this book, as the title suggests, discusses the cholera outbreak in London 1854 and how it rocked the field of epidemiology, water treatment and management, and even the way we track data. Interestingly enough, this was not the first nor the last significant cholera outbreak in London. Actually, it had been happening pretty frequently. But this outbreak specifically draws attention not only because over 600 people died in one small neighborhood over the course of 2 weeks, but because it proved that water was actually the culprit, contrary to popular belief. Prior to the widespread acceptance of germ theory, there were two silos of scientific belief regarding the spread of disease. Contagionists believed that everything was spread through person-to-person contact. But this didn't explain how illnesses passed between people that weren't making physical contact. Therefore, the more popular frame of thought at the time was miasma. Miasmatists believed that illness originated from your environment and that disease was passed through foul airways. So, during this time, impoverished communities were often stinkier simply because it was more difficult for them to find time to either move their waste or keep their spaces clean. Furthermore, it easily explains why laborers and low-class workers had a life expectancy of 20 to 30 years, while those living in cleaner spaces, like wealthy tradesmen and civic leaders, had an almost doubled life expectancy of 40 years. This made it really easy for city leaders to cast off frequent cholera outbreaks as a result of the poor community's odors, and therefore their apathy towards taking care of their environments. As the General Board of Health leader Edwin Chadwick once said, "All smell is disease." But why was 19th century England so smelly, you ask? Well, it turns out that pre-modern sewage systems, people in urban spaces relied on cesspools. And cesspools are a fancy term for storing a household's fecal matter in their basement and waiting until it was nearly overflowing to call someone in to shovel all of that gunk out and take it out to farmlands for use as manure. Okay, but why is this stink specific to 19th century London if people have been defecating since the dawn of time? Well, hunter-gatherers definitely didn't stay put long enough to worry about their waste, and the rural communities that came after them were widespread out enough that cholera never became a prominent issue because they didn't have to worry about waste storage. London is one of the first few examples where humans began to live in tight urban spaces, making it difficult to do your business. The more people you have and the less mobile your community, the more waste you accumulate, and the more difficult it is to get away from that waste. As they say, you shouldn't shit where you eat. London was the biggest city in the world at that time, and consequently, it became obvious that cholera was becoming a much larger problem. Miasmatists theorized that since fecal matter was accumulating in household cesspools, they were resulting in greater spread of foul odors, and therefore these odors were causing these outbreaks of cholera. So, relying upon this belief, the same Edwin Chadwick, now a self-proclaimed sanitation engineer, led a campaign for the Nuisances Removal and Contagious Diseases Prevention Act, which was passed in 1848. This bill called for all buildings, both new and pre-existing, to redirect their waste from cesspools into the Thames River. Yes, that river, the one that runs straight down the center of London, being the same river that many Londoners at the same time got their clean drinking water.
We should take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else!
So, in short, the rotting human feces from all of London's population was quickly moved from below homes in their cesspools into the Thames River. And no, they didn't have the foresight to make sure that the drinking water was sourced north of where they were putting their waste into the river. Chadwick and other star miasmatists at the time saw this as a flawless idea. If deadly diseases like cholera were associated with the odor, you had to move the thing that stunk. And it didn't really quite matter where you moved it as long as the city of London itself became less stinky. Less stink in your environment equals less disease, or so they thought. Ironically, this led to the Great Stink of 1858 due to the putrid air emanating from the river that they put all of their waste into. The disaster that was the London sanitary system led to the 1854 cholera outbreak. This book focuses on the outbreak in Golden Square, specifically from the Broad Street water pump. A prominent scientist, John Snow, used this outbreak to not only prove miasma theory, but to create a detailed daily account of the outbreak to build his case. Snow combined statistical, geographic, and sociological data to demonstrate that the source of this disease was the water rather than the air, and presented his results on a map of the neighborhood. This was a novel way of demonstrating data and really effectively visually demonstrated where the source of this outbreak was clearly coming from. During this outbreak, 616 people died, and it all stemmed from a mother throwing her sickly infant's diaper into her home cesspool, which was already leaking into the water supply at the Broad Street pump. Those who drank the water from this pump ingested millions of cholera bacteria and died within a matter of hours. After a lot of back and forth, Snow was eventually able to convince city officials to remove the pump handle so that no one else could drink from this water. So while the source of this disease seemed obvious as we look back from the 21st century, to the people in the 1850s, it was difficult to grasp that their source of water was actually poisoning them all. This water that they drank was clear and it didn't stink, so it was unimaginable that it could have been hurting them. In fact, the masses didn't even believe Snow's waterborne theory until the 1860s. In summary, this was a great book to learn more about germ theory, the scientific process, and beliefs we had about public health not even 2 centuries ago. We've come a long way in terms of learning more about viral diseases, but as we're learning in current events, we don't know everything. These types of diseases still hold great power over the human race, and can even force millions of the most technologically savvy humans into their homes for months at a time. So as we move forward in this pandemic that we're all experiencing right now, it's really important to look back and appreciate how far we've come. I hope you're all staying safe and staying sane and doing the best that you can for your physical and mental health during this time. Please let me know if you have any more topic requests or feedback on this video. Thanks!